There is no evidence that we have a shortage of STEM workers in America. In 2022, there were I think it was 17 million STEM graduates. So that means American people who graduated.
This is complicated because like you're comparing like somebody with a BA in biology as a STEM graduate with somebody with a PhD in computer science. This is a program with problems that we can solve very easily, by the way. But when we have a population of, say, parents of U.S. citizens that come here on green cards, 150,000, not 85, 150, who come here in their 50s, work 10 years as, say, low-wage jobs, then collect Social Security and Medicare that is bankrupting this country. And yet we're focusing on a population that is tiny, that is relatively higher skilled. I think we should call this a day and just say, we just are going to pick the highest wage offers of the H1-B visa. We're not going to pick all these Indian tech outsourcing firms that exploit these Indians in India, and they tell them, you have to pay me a fee in order to get you on the lottery. And that's what they do. That's what they do.
And the lottery is what makes it prone to abuse.
That's
the fact that it's just this pool and we're going to pluck out of this pool rather than allow employers to compete for the highest salary. Isn't that a way to determine whether these people are in fact brilliant?
Absolutely.
Is by letting the employers compete. And Trump proposed that in 2020 and the Biden administration promptly undid that, which tells you a lot about the Biden administration.
We shouldn't have a lottery because we shouldn't have a cap on these workers. I mean, the idea that we should be limiting people who have job offers of $100,000. I mean, it's
but they don't also. If you
yes, there's a spectrum of people here, but even a single person who's making above average income in the United States is contributing significantly to the prosperity of the country. It's far too restrictive, and you can see that in the lottery. The lottery is, obviously you're picking people randomly. We should just be letting these people come in and contribute to our country. We're basically turning away every year at least $150 billion a year. And the idea that the government is going to know who's going to be the next great person. I mean, you look at the number of CEOs who've risen up through the ranks who were just that ordinary. They were just the ordinary H1-B, the ordinary international student. I mean, Musk was the ordinary international student, except he overstayed his visa and violated the rules of immigration law in order to start his business. But the idea that the government is going to know, oh, this person's going to be the next important founder of the next great company.
No, but
it's just ludicrous.
And Elon Musk would have passed that academic proficiency test that I mentioned. He would have knocked that out of the park. I mean,
who cares about some standardized test? Look at what the market is saying.
Well, it does matter, though. It does matter, though,
no,
because if you just
really
allowed anybody to come to the United States, you have 1 billion people show up at the door.
Oh, what are we talking about? Anybody?
World,
we're talking about the H1-B visa. The H1-B visa.
Wait, you're also talking about. I'm going to jump in here.
Half of the world would prefer to be an Uber driver on welfare in the United States than living in their country.
Hold on one second. You still have to realize that there are there's different wage categories for how many years of experience. And the first category is zero to 2 years experience. And they can make from, I think it's 39,000 to 50,000, something like that, right? Or 60,000, 39 to 59.9 is what the first year for 0 to 2 years experience. We're talking, and there's that they need to pay these people on these H1Bs. So you're talking about, we have kids coming out of college and they're freaking out because they can't get jobs and they're taking these horrible entry-level positions, but they can't get these entry-level positions because they're going to people who are supposed to be skilled workers. I don't understand.
It's just not true. I mean, the number of software.
Why should we take anybody if they're supposed to be highly skilled? Why are we taking anybody with 0 to 2 years experience anyway?
Entry-level accountants from abroad.
I will challenge that, but from another perspective, from the right. And I would say first, what kind of person do you care about, right? When we think about the economics of immigration, who are physicians competing to? Even an entry-level physician. An entry-level physician is not competing with a construction worker or an office worker.
I have problems with that too, though. The physicians. My mom used to train people at Jefferson, and they would prioritize these foreign.
Sure, but those physicians are not competing with construction workers. And what happens if you have, say, 10,000 more physicians in the United States? Yes, they're going to compete with American physicians. They will certainly reduce their salaries, but they are going to demand services from construction workers, from stores, from apartments. They're going to raise the wages. Yes, they're going to raise the wages of the working class and depress the ones of physicians. And, maybe that's a good trade-off.
But no, when you have medical schools saying, okay, we only, like Jefferson just had, right? We only admit this many anesthesia students, say, right? And so you look at their grades. We have a girl from Penn. She has a 4.0. She's doing great. She doesn't get in, but the people from Iran were prioritized, right?
You know that people who are really
things.
being prioritized are the DEI stuff.
Okay, so true, that's true. But these people are
else.
coming over on specialty visas to even be here to study like that, right? And so now that person who could have, been at Jefferson now has to go to maybe a lesser one, and it affects, where they get placed.
Yeah. This is a bigger problem. Like, we limit the number of residencies. Like,
right.
The American Medical Association lobby to keep
why are we
physician
giving
salaries
it to
high.
Well, practically,
farm work at all?
Many of the H1-B recipients are programmers, like cheap,
That's right. From
basic
India.
programmers. Okay, so that's the STEM field. Why would we recruit for the STEM field if we don't have a shortage, is what the advocates of H1-B will say. Do we have a shortage of STEM workers in America? Unequivocally, no. There is no evidence that we have a shortage of STEM workers in America. In 2022, there were I think it was 17 million STEM graduates. So that means American people who graduated.
This is complicated because you're comparing somebody with a BA in biology as a STEM graduate with somebody with a PhD in computer science. They're both STEM graduates.
And we have to realize, I'm going to push back there a little bit too, in that we are 36th in the world for STEM majors. That's where we rank. As far as output and quality, we rank that low. I think we're 16th in math, right? So it's not like our students are prioritizing things like I think psychology has moved up to the 5th best major. So there is that issue that
America produces great lawyers.
Yeah, well, listen, Vivek was pushing back on culture, and I kind of have to give it to him. There are the tiger moms, and there are the people that prioritize this, and maybe our parents do need to wake up and really start, forcing your kids to actually do their homework. Like that comedian's math is hard. I want to die for my country, that thing. But
yeah, I also think there's an indictment of academia embedded in that. I used to cover a lot of education for National Review, and I know that's not what this conversation is about. But look, if you're adding DEI as a fundamental building block of the medical training in America, you're going to have a diminished quality of medicine and medical trainees and graduates. So it's not necessarily the students' fault. Engineers too, and you're right that we're not exactly ranked the highest when it comes to the STEM
and by the way, there are hundreds of counties in this country that have no primary care physician. And so do we say, is it okay to stop a foreign physician who graduated abroad to come and save lives in rural America? I think it would be a great thing to allow those people to save lives.
But they won't go there either. See that
actually, we have a program specifically to require them to go there.
The problem is though is that insurance companies and the way that the insurance companies put their claws into the people in the medical field really hamper how successful they can be. I know because my whole family's in medicine. I'm the only one that's out on that. But so yes and no. I mean, we have shortages of dermatologists. The VA can't even get a single dermatologist to actually go work for them. But that's also because of how their pay scheme and how they pay. Anything that's overly regulated is going to do bad.
I do see your point. I see your point. So my family has a small cabin in a very rural town in Maine that literally has one major doctor on the peninsula, and he happens to be from the Philippines. And his family, they're very, very close to me. And, growing up in this town, I've noticed how the whole town is dependent on this doctor because, frankly, who wants to be a doctor in rural Maine? Very few people. There's a huge brain drain out of that state all the time. And I've seen the impact of his work and service in a place like that.
We can have more people like that and not have programmers making $50K a year that are working for hire through third-party companies. I think that's kind of the solution.
Or graphic designers
should look like.
It was, I think Patrick Bet-David was one of the people that was speaking out the most about it. And then when they went and pulled up the H1-B records for him, he's got a graphic designer making $45,000. I was like, I know so many graphic designers right now that are lining up for jobs that can't wait to get them. And so what are we doing hiring graphic designers to do thumbnails for Patrick Bet-David?
The vast majority of H1Bs are in computer jobs. Software developing employment has doubled in the last 10 years. This doubled. That's an insane rate of growth. There's been no decline in wages. If you look at the wages of the workers who were there 10 years ago, they have increased dramatically. You have, yes, lots of new people coming into the field, so they're coming in at the entry-level wage, but there's no evidence that they're harming anyone. The basic idea, right, getting back to the basic economics, what is the H-1B in this context? It is a license to work, and a restrictive licensing regime hurts everyone except the special interest being protected. And Daniel's right. Who is the special interest being protected here? It's the top 10% of wage earners in the United States. That's who we're talking about inflating the wages.
Well, no, we're just talking about $50K a year.
Well, I mean, that's a spectrum. The average really, I mean, the average of this is $118,000 a year.
That's the median, so if which means half make less.
So yes, I understand that, but the average matters, or the median matters in this context, because if you got rid of the entire program, then you're lowering the wages for all of those.
Is that the average for the H-1B visa applicants, or is that how much they're making on average?
That's how much the median person makes. The average is,
Which, by the way, it means, like, if you look at the data, if you just did wage ranking, because of the percentage that gets selected, the minimum salary that would end up being selected is over 120K. That would be the minimum. The average would be well over 200K.
Yeah.
So this is about a trade-off, David, because we cannot just let in everybody with a job offer.
You could absolutely uncap the H-1B. We didn't have to. We had 190,000. The reason why it's gotten so insane in terms of the lottery is because we've had these restrictions in place, severe restrictions in the place for the last 20 years. In 1999, we had a cap of 190,000, so we didn't have this big backlog and these problems in terms of getting the visas. So we could have a much more expansive.
You know how many applications there were, right? There were like over 500,000. So you think that it would be like okay to just
every year,
500,000 more every year?
No, it wouldn't work like that, because the reason why we've created this huge backlog of the number of people who are trying to get it is because of the restrictions we've had for the last decade. So if we didn't have those restrictions, we would have not.
I mean, I think that there would actually be cultural consequences. I do think that there would be political consequences. I do think that you would have people competing with like medium level jobs that wouldn't be the, super high skilled. I'm super in favor of the high skilled part, but I don't think that it would be okay to let in, 500,000 programmers making $50,000 a year into the United States.
Yeah, and most Americans who voted for Trump would agree that, like, we're all for brain draining the rest of the world.
Right.
Bring in the prodigies. But when it comes to the middle denominator, no.
Right.
We have no interest in that because, as I was mentioning, we have 17 million STEM graduates. Yes, it's a diverse range of majors. Only 8 million STEM jobs filled. That means we have all these extra employees that have STEM degrees and disciplines who could be reactivated and re-engaged. The question is, why haven't they been? I would argue it's because wages in STEM have stagnated. Why have they stagnated? Because of the influx of H-1B applicants and recipients. There's no incentive to raise their compensation, benefits, and salaries when they can just get cheaper labor abroad.
That's not why they've stagnated. They've stagnated because there's been this huge infusion of new people entering the fields. It's like my public school down the street. The average height of the student fell when they increased the number of classes. You won't believe why. It wasn't because the public school teachers were chopping the kids' feet off. It was because they added an elementary school onto the building. The same thing is happening with the wage distribution in these fields that have, as I mentioned, doubled in employment.
More people are graduating college.
So more people are graduating college and going into these fields, which is a sign that the system is working. The wages are encouraging people to go into these fields. For every foreign increase in foreign employment in software development, there's been 2 Americans drawn in to.
No, but I do think, David, that you're ignoring that there is a trade-off, and certainly when you have more people of a specific skill level, you are going to, in the long run, depress the wages of that skill level, but you are going to increase the wages of other skills levels. So when you say, we don't need more STEM graduates, like I think you're right, you would increase the average wage of like the STEM workforce in the U.S., native born, but you would decrease the real incomes of people who are not in STEM. And I would rather help Americans who are not in college than Americans who went to college, who, by the way, it's actually a political issue. Like, why are like Republicans complaining about harming Silicon Valley liberal woke people and
because their kids want jobs, because their children want jobs, because they've been like blue collar, working hard. They save their money, they send their kids to college, and then their kids are coming out and they can't find jobs, and they're crying in their cars on TikTok saying, I can't afford to live. And so they're like, hey, this is harming my family. No matter which way you look at it, it's harming their family, and they don't want it.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.